Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Chris Bircher, Director of Technical Services here at CTC, and today we are going to go over our project activity logger from the CTC Nexus suite, or we like to call it PAL for short. And we're just going to take you through everything and show you how it works from start to finish. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I want to encourage everyone to ask questions using the questions panel. If you're attending live today, I will be monitoring those and will answer them as I see them or when it makes sense. And if I don't get to them during the presentation, I will certainly take time at the end to answer any questions that I missed. If you are watching our recorded version on YouTube, please ask questions using the comments panel. We monitor those as well, and we'll make sure that you get answers to your questions. With that being said, now we can go. Now, during the course of any Revit project, potentially any Revit project, we may notice performance degradations. It takes longer to open, or we start getting unnecessary crashing or errors that don't make any sense, and the overall performance just seems rather poor. It's taking longer to do tasks that normally don't take that long, and it's always hard to tell why that may happen, or we have a list of things that potentially it could be, right? But you don't know until you've actually kind of started going through that list. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we had some reporting and some visual indicators to let us know that we could reference without having to open up every single model and dive in to figure out what's going on. So that's what PAL does for you. It helps you dig in and tracks a lot of that information and puts it and presents it into a format that's easy to decipher. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to show you how that works, how to set it up, and so that you can kind of stay on top of your model health. So today we're going to show you how to set it up. We're going to configure everything. We're going to get PAL up and running. And then, it says intro to the interface. There really isn't an interface, really. Most of the interface that we'll be dealing with today is in the visual reporting, so in the online dashboards. There is a little bit that may come into play, but really we're just reviewing reports and taking a look at some of the information that you end up with. And there's a couple of different ways to view the data, and I will show you both today. So with the configuration for PAL, it comes part of the CTC Nexus suite. So when you go to our website and you download CTC Nexus suite, you're going to get it's a single installer, but you get a bunch of stuff. One of the features one of the products is Project Activity Logger, or PAL. So once you've installed the Nexus suite, PAL is installed on your machine as a service, and it's going to be there, and there's no extra piece that you have to do as far as getting that installed. Part two to the setup for this is downloading the config file. There's a configuration file that's effectively like a license file of sorts, and it will tell the service that's running on your machine where to send the data, right? And so that's our way of being able to determine which account the data goes to. So that way you're always getting your organization's data, no one else's. And then ultimately we have to also define projects. We have to know, we want to organize the data a little bit. It can't just come into one big mass flood. So we can create projects, we can point data to go to certain places, so that it makes sense and it's easier to see what's going on. And now we can get information on a project by project basis. So then we'll review the data once we've gotten through and set all that up, and I showed you how that works. And we'll talk a little bit about the download portion, because if you've seen previous discussions on this, or you've worked with our products in the past, there's a slight change to this. So I just want to make sure we point it out and guide you to where you can get some more information on it. But that's all for PowerPoint today. So we're just going to jump right into it, because it doesn't make sense to not do that. All right. So now I'm on the CTC portal. So you just go to ctcsoftware.com and you log in. If you've got an account, you'll log in, click the little profile here, sign in. You'll get to this page. For setting up PAL and getting your project's logging data, if you haven't already done it, you go to the Downloads tab, you download the Nexus suite, and make sure you choose the appropriate installer that you need, single user installer versus a multi-user installer. Click download, run the install, and then we need to get the config file in place. And that's probably one of the most important aspects to this. Having the service installed is only half the setup. Without the config file, the data never leaves the user machine. This is what ultimately tells it that it needs to go somewhere. So if you come to the projects tab here, even if you don't have any projects defined yet, you can still get the config file. So come to projects. Underneath settings here is where we have access to the config file. Download this config file. It's just a JSON, hiveconfig.json. Oh, I still had a copy from before, puts it there. Then you need to place this on user machines. And for this to work, the file needs to go here. On your C drive, users, public, CTC software, license settings. And then I'll have my hive config JSON file here. That's all you got to do, right? Once that file is in place, oops, I didn't mean to switch. Once it's in place, you're all set. And now when Revit gets launched and your project files get opened, the PAL service will run in tandem with Revit, kind of in the background. Visually, you have no idea that this is running. And as you open files and as you sync to Central, records are going to start being captured and posted. So I'm going to show you this. And for those that care, all of those records and the data files get created here behind your user profile under App Data Local, CTC Software, PALQ, and then Cloud. And you can see I've already got a couple files present here, and that's just because I had a session of Revit open already. But basically what this is doing is this is where the JSON data that we're creating and extracting from Revit, it gets stored here momentarily until the poster service shoves everything into your database in the cloud. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of highlight that real quick. So I've got a project file open. And this, you can do this with the project defined or without a project defined. It's not going to mess anything up. This is just a quick test to make sure your configuration works, right? Oops, I don't even need to be here. Just go to Sync to Central. I got my project open. You hit Sync to Central, and I'm going to jump back over to here real quick. And as that is saving, here they come. My JSON files come in, and depending on the changes made and how long it took and everything, you may see up to 6 or 7 JSON files appear, and then they disappear. And that means that now you know the poster did its job, pushed all the data into the cloud. Okay, so we know we're working. If for whatever reason those don't work, there is a quick little way to run a check to make sure that things are set up correctly. There is and this is where this mini UI comes into play. There is a thing called a PAL Cloud Configuration Utility that comes on your machine. You open this up and you hit test. And if you set it up properly, it'll be successful. Otherwise, it'll say it failed and it'll try to tell you why. 9 times out of 10, it's because the config file is not placed in the right on the machine at all or in the right location. So that's just a quick way to start doing some basic troubleshooting in the event that stuff is missing or not posting. Okay. So now that we've confirmed that everything's working properly, I'm going to jump back into my dashboard and we're going to start doing some setup. So the first little bit here, since I'm here, is what do I want to log, right? And so there's going to be a bunch of stuff about sync to central times and warning counts, view counts, element counts, file size, users, time spent in the model, actions performed in the model. There's all kinds of stuff going on here, but we have control over a few things that typically end up being massive amounts of information. Warnings typically is a really, really long list of information. So how much about the warning do you need? Can it just be a summarized version of your warnings, or do you need the details? So you have some control over that. I prefer personally summarized. I'm familiar enough with Revit that I don't need all the details. You still get the warning itself, the message, and which element IDs they are. So for me, that's good enough. List of add-ins, when audits are being run, when users are switching back and forth between views, and a print session. So these are the options you have. If you don't care about the add-ins per se, don't log it. That's okay. Or maybe, auditing as a standard practice and it just kind of happens, you can turn that off, right? It's entirely up to you. Just make sure that whatever you do, you hit save at the end. You don't have to re-download the config file then after that. That's all this is all managed via the cloud, and it will only record the data that you ask it to. Next step is to set up your project. And there's really only one good way to do this right now, and that's just to set it up. So you click the plus sign here and you define the project. Give it a number, give it a name. Those are really the only two pieces of information that we care about at this stage. For the actual project creation, there's a lot more fields here that you can fill out if you need to, or if you choose to. But really all we care about on the surface here is project name and number. So if I do, let's just do this 2024.08.22. Let's call it ADES samples for now. Oh, no, I can do this. Let's put it there. There we go. And we'll hit create. And then once it's created, you get an opportunity to define the project file path. Now, this is where you have a couple options on how to set this up. Option 1 is you can click add and copy paste your file paths in. Option 2 is you can wait until the project file has been opened and synced to central once and associate the path to the project after the fact. It's entirely up to you how you want to do that. I prefer doing it after the fact once the file's been opened, because then I'm not on the hook for making sure I don't miss anything in the file path. And where that comes in really beneficial is when you're working with Revit models stored in the construction cloud or BIM 360, because those file paths are unique. They're not your typical mapped to the R drive kind of thing. So I always skip that part and go to next. And then I give out permission to who has access to this information online. Right? Do we want everyone on the project team to be able to see this? Do I want everyone in my firm to be able to see this? Or do I really only care about my BIM team and anyone kind of in that that level of use in my office? You have the ability to associate user groups here and give them a role. Are they in charge, or are they just taking a peek? So I typically will add my BIM team like this. And if anyone else would potentially need to go here to reference anything, I will associate them. So, in this case, I don't have a project-based group of users. So we'll just set everyone to be a viewer. So now my BIM team can do what they need to do, and everyone else just gets to peek at it if they really need to. And that's the setup of the beginning stages of the setup. The next piece is path mapping. And so here's how I like to do that personally. We keep track of project files that have been mapped and files that are unmapped. So you would go to the unmapped set here, find the project that you have already opened and saved. This tracks everything that you've worked on effectively, project-wise. And you can search for a particular project file that you were looking for by name or by number, and then you can go ahead and load it up. So let's say I'm going to use this one. So you check the box to get the link, hit the link, and specify which project to associate that with. So I'm going to grab where did it go? My samples, there it is. And then you hit link. So now any Revit files at that file path are now going to start going to my project. And then now the setup is done. Now, theoretically, I can start tracking that model data. Now, fast forward in time, we've opened files, we've taken a look at things. There's a couple of different ways to view your data. The first one is in the same portal online here. You have a dashboard. It's the first thing you see when you log in. We have a whole bunch of different types of reporting going on the dashboard page here. Enterprise gets into users and groups and account information. Projects is what we're focusing on today, where we have access to everything about the projects that we've been recording and tracking. If you use our CMS or content management system, you'll have some metrics down here about that. We have stuff for your cloud licensing, and we're going to talk about the downloads down here in a moment. For the projects area, now I have a couple of different fields that we can take a look at and start reviewing information about some of the projects that we've captured. I have an overview tab, first and foremost, that really is just showing me what my largest projects are in the office that we are actively working on. If we are using the deadlines portion of the project setup, what's coming up, what are we approaching? We also have where are we spending all of our time, right? We got a nice little chart that kind of shows you which projects are sucking up the most time, and who are your most active Revit users, at least here, as far as projects that are being tracked. Then you can get into the project specifics, and that's kind of where the rest of some of the stuff gets into. So here, you get to go ahead and specify which project and then you want to look at. So I have a couple here to choose from, but basically you pick the project number or search for it and select it later. And it'll tell you the list of the Revit files associated with that project and how much time has been spent in each one and what the actions are. So you can tell in this case we do a really great job of opening the files for our discussions and then not really doing much, or at least we're not saving the work, but it's been open a lot. And then we just get another view of that, which is sometimes a little bit easier to understand which ones are getting used the most and by whom, who's spending the most time in the model and who's doing the most editing, right? And you just keep on going. We got a model summary tab that gets into a little bit more explicit information about the projects themselves. You know, what the max saved time or sync time is, what the averages are. Same with open, warnings, counts at least. And then you can get into some of the basic metrics. How many warnings, the phases, design options, materials, views, rooms, spaces, if they're being used. You come even further down and you start to get into what types of views are in the project. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you exactly how many sheets are in the file, or floor plans, or 3D views, and so on. And you can go ahead and look for linked files if there are any associated with this project or that project, depending on what you're working with. And you can just kind of keep going. Oh, that model didn't sync up yet. I just did that one like 15 minutes ago. So I guess it's more than 15 now. We've been on a call for 15. But so you just get a bunch of different bits of information to work with. You're always going to get a 30-day snippet of your data on the dashboards. Right? That's about as much as we can handle up here. And but we have things for open time, save time, file size if it's changing. And this is where you would notice potentially something going wrong, right? So, on July 30th, maybe it was 55 megs, but now today we're up at 255 megs. That's a big increase over the course of, the last 30 days or 3 weeks. Now it's very possible a ton of work could have happened on that. And we've got other charts and tables here to explain that may indicate that. Like, oh, they just spent $200 working on this project. That makes sense. They did a lot of work. But if they didn't do 200 hours and, there were 2 people in there and all of a sudden now the file's 200 megs bigger, chances are something's going wrong, whether there's some corruption, exploded AutoCAD files, inserted of a bunch of PDFs and images, who knows? But this at least gives you an indication that something might be going wrong here. And again, you can start to break it down by individual files at this level as well, based on who's doing what. And then we have a performance detail page that shares a lot of the similar information, but you got to know what project you're working with. I don't think this one's even supposed to be turned on yet, to be perfectly honest with you. Synced essential performance. Oh, I grabbed the wrong file again. So it just tells you, breaks it down even further, is really all we're getting at here. And then we have our warnings. Everybody's least favorite task to deal with on a project. And this is what a summarized version of the warnings looks like. It tells you the description, how many times you have it, and which element IDs are affected by it. And this is the summarized version. A detailed version would effectively be the itemized list. Instead of seeing a 2 here, you would just see this warning twice with the affected element IDs associated to each individual warning. So this one would show itself 24 times. So it takes up a lot more space. That's really what it boils down to. And last but not least is the user summary tab. Which users in your firm that have been working on this, how much time they've spent, what projects they're working on, how much time they've spent on projects. So it's a pretty good overview of all of the information that you have access to. And what you see is what you get, right? There's not a lot of customizing we can do here. Some of the tables and charts, you know, or I should say, some of the items will adjust based off what you selected, depending on the project and which page you're on. But for the most part, you're not changing anything on this area. Where you could potentially do some additional digging and creating your own visuals and getting a little bit more information, and maybe some information that you wouldn't normally see on a dashboard, like on our dashboard, is in the downloads area. We do have an API data support package where you can download a set that gives you access to all the data that you've captured over any stretch of time. And then, we give you a good starting point, right? We give you a Power BI template, but it's your data, and you can control how much of it you want to review. Do you want to see everything, or are you only concerned about the last 7 days or the last 30 days or 90 days or whatever the case may be? And this is a direct replacement of the workflow that we had before, where there was a Power BI file still, but there were 3 Excel files that you could download for users, PAL, and CMS, and those you had to re-download again each time you wanted more information. This is a direct connection to your account. You download it once, and once you got it set up, you just start hitting refresh. And I'm not gonna physically take you through the process today because Sean just talked about it in his last webinar. So I'm gonna give you a link to that resource. But what I am gonna do is show you what you're getting and what the end results are. So when you click this download, you're gonna get a zip file called CTC reporting v3.default. It's a zip file. Once you extract it, this is what you get. You're going to get a README BI file template, or a BI file, and an Excel file that are pre-populated by or pre-configured by us. And the README explains what you need to do to get this set up. Okay, and in a nutshell, and just make sure you follow these steps explicitly. And you can do it in tandem with some of the other videos on our YouTube channel. But basically, in a nutshell, you first get an API key from us at CTC. You can email license request at ctcsoftware.com. We'll hook you up. Just ask for a reporting API key. Then you'll open an Excel document. There is a place to insert your API key here on the queries and connections area, right? You put it here, you refresh. You're going to get a bunch of data. Some of these are configured differently, and again, watch those other videos to get more information on it, but that's how you get connected and you start getting access to that data. Then we have a Power BI file. The only kicker with the Power BI file is pointing it to the Excel document that you just set up, and you do that under transform data, edit parameters, point it to the right file, save, apply your changes, you've got your data. Now, the reason why we set it up this way is because Power BI doesn't do a very good job as a database utility. It's great at a visual tool, but it's not very good with database. Excel's much better at that. So we inserted Excel as a middleman to download and store the data. Power BI is your visual. So that's why it's a 2-part process now. But effectively, what you're getting here is almost the exact same thing that we had online. And we did that way on purpose to make it so that it's familiar. So we have our overview with largest models and deadlines and contributors. Keep on going, and you get your summary with all your projects listed, and for the project summary and the models and so on and so forth. The nice thing about this, though, is you have full control over what you're seeing now. You have control over the appearance. You can make edits to this stuff. You can start filtering things out or changing how the amount of the time is being presented. Maybe you don't want hours, maybe you want minutes, or maybe you want to create additional BI files so that you can start distributing them to different project teams, or whatever you want to do. go for it, do it up. And that is the whole reason why we did this, so that you can make these the way you want to make them. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that because, again, Sean's already dug into this and the reporting API even further in another webinar, and he gets into way more detail in it than I could ever get into. So I'm just going to direct you to it because that will be a much better resource for you guys on this one. So on our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/CTC software. The quickest way to find it, honestly, is to go to playlists and under the Nexus reporting API. It's the first one. Boom, comprehensive introduction to the Nexus reporting API. And he spends his time talking about the API, what you're getting with it, and what the Excel file provides, and how to link it, how to set it up, and how to link it to the Power BI file, and all that good stuff. So that one he just apparently just posted yesterday. So watch it. It's a great video, and it'll get you everything you need beyond the PAL stuff. Yeah, so that sums it up for today. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. I hope you see some benefit in this, and hopefully PAL can go ahead and be a useful tool for you guys to help figure out what's going on with some of your projects when they start getting out of hand. So thank you all again, and have a great day.